Welcome to this new episode of Trini Trent TV, where we talk about the hits, the songs, the eras, the albums, and of course the artists that we love. And in this episode, we're going to be continuing our 5-part look, our deep dive into the amazing career of Miss Mariah Carey with part 4. Or you can see my fingers. Part 4. So in this episode, what I'm going to do is first start off by sharing my story. My journey of being a Mariah Carey fan in the early 2000s following Glitter. Then we're going to get into the Charmbracelet album and how she had to deal with a very special type of rejection. And then we're going to go into how she claimed her freedom on the Emancipation era. And then we're going to go into talking about the issues that she faced with her voice and her vocal performances as the 2000s moved on. And then, of course, we're going to end with awesome songs, aka my favorite songs from this era of Mariah's career. In the early 2000s, I was very much a champion and a defender of all things Mariah Carey. I was an extreme super fan. I was a lamb. You couldn't tell me nothing about Mariah. And that's because, in this time, she was being seriously bullied, teased, and mocked. And I felt very protective of her because I saw so much of myself in her struggle. As someone who was teased heavily in secondary school, what Americans call high school, as a young teenager, I really felt that Mariah and I were on a very similar journey. You see, as we got into the Charmbracelet era, Mariah began to turn inward. When you're dealing with all of the different pressures that I just pointed out, and you're dealing with all the backlash from the world and the trauma of what she had been through, it's normal. It's a normal response for somebody to go inward, to really dive into themselves and discover who they are. And that's what Mariah was doing at this time. She was really reflecting on herself and on her life. And her music became very autobiographical in the lyrics and in the themes. And that's really reflected in a quote that she gave to MTV in 2002, where she said, "This is probably the most personal album I've ever made. I basically moved into the studio in Italy. I was writing songs in my little apartment upstairs, and then I would go downstairs and record them at night. I had so much to say, and this was a perfect outlet for me to do that." Mariah really felt that now that she was on a very supportive label, because she was on Island Records now, she was free of Sony, she was free of the chaos of Virgin and EMI. Now that she was on Island Records on Universal, she felt supported. She felt she had a foundation on which to build. And she was allowing herself with this willingness to really tell her story in a way that she had not done before. But in many ways, Mariah was still plagued by the need to prove. That need to prove herself. And this is something that really started early in her career. We spoke about that since we started this series here on Trini Trent TV, this In Retrospect series. Because in that first stage of her career, Mariah felt this pressure to prove who she was as an artist. She had to prove that she could actually sing. She had to prove that she was not a studio creation and she was not just a pawn of Sony Music, not just a product. Then, of course, we came to the second era of her career, where she wanted to prove that she could be a global act. Not just global geographically and branch out from the American market, but also be global in her music. Explore her roots in R&B and hip-hop. And then, of course, we got to that third era of her career, where she wanted to prove that she could stand on her own 2 feet without the support of Tommy Mottola, and prove that she could survive on her own as an artist at the helm of her career. And this, in many ways, is connected to Mariah's need to please people. Mariah's need to really please people who are looking at her music and show them that, I can live up to your expectations. Please accept me. Please like me. And when I think of that, I remember this quote that I found in Slant in 2005, where she said, "I discovered that my desire to make music came from the need to heal myself. My desire to become famous came from the need to feel worthy and accepted." So in many ways, Mariah was just trying to really live up to other people's expectations so that way she can be accepted by them. And that is something that she built her entire career on. And it's something that I still think she's struggling with today. And when you listen to the Charmbracelet album, you can hear an artist who's really working and trying to please all of the different members of her audience. Mariah built so many different audiences over the first decade of her career and into the 2000s. And it felt like she was trying to tick off and please all of the different corners of her market. But you see, when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. And that was reflected in the sales of the album. It was very lukewarm, that reception. I mean, it did better than Glitter, but barely so. And that's because the album lacked conviction. She didn't pick a single direction, or she didn't pick a clear voice. You know, she didn't have to pick one genre, but it didn't feel that Mariah had a very clear direction of this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it and this is my way forward. And when the critics sensed that insecurity, they lined up to take shots at her. It's like sharks who smell blood in the water, or vultures who see a dead cat in the road. You know, as we call vultures in Trinidad, kobo. So some kobo circling in the sky, and they see a dead cat or a dead rabbit, and they say, hey, let me pick at this. And Mariah got a lot of backlash. Now, I normally don't do this, but I wanted to show some, just pull out a few lines of what the critics were saying about the album, Charmbracelet, in 2002. Entertainment Weekly gave the album a C rating and said it was middle-of-the-road muck. Rolling Stone gave it a 2 out of 5 rating and said it's like a stream of watercolors that bleed into a puddle of brown. And then Yahoo Music in the UK gave it a 4 out of 10 rating and said it was conservative, unadventurous, and uninspiring. I'm going to throw that negative energy away from me. Throw away my cue card. I don't want that on me. But none of those really compared to a review done on All Music in 2002 by someone by the name of Stephen Thomas Erlewine, who really gives us a very great case study about what I want to discuss next. Stephen Thomas Erlewine, a seemingly white man, I have to say seemingly because this is 2020. You can never tell anymore. I mean, people think Ariana Grande is a Latina from the Bronx. You could never tell anymore. I mean, Mariah is a good example. You really don't know who is what anymore unless they say. But when I looked at what he wrote, he gave us a brilliant example of how people view Mariah's race and her place in hip-hop and R&B and her right to explore her very being as an artist. I mean, this is I pulled out some lines from his review on All Music in 2002, where he gave Charmbracelet a 2 out of 5 rating. And he said some of this. Now, y'all could go and look up this to make sure I'm not taking anything out of context. But he said, it's a botched attempt to restore a career after a botched attempt at a crossover. Her whole ghetto fabulous trip of the late 90s eroded her core MOR audience. The backpedaling is immediately evident. Mariah is back in the adult contemporary camp, no longer trying to prove that she's real. To me, I don't know this man, so I can't say that he's racist. So I don't know his intention. But I felt that his comments reflected a lot of the issues of racism that are present in the American psyche and the American discussion of pop culture. Because what he has done in this is saying that Mariah needs to stay aligned and that who she really is aligned with a pop MOR audience. And it denies Mariah the right to explore herself as a multiracial person, as a black woman of the biracial experience. Now, even if this was a black man who had written this or a black person who wrote this, I would still interpret it as racism. Because what it does, what these words do, is that it denies Mariah her right to explore who she is as a person and as an artist. And that is something that we constantly see in conversations. I mean, right now we have all the conversation of verses, that's the trending thing on social media. And I see Mariah's name come up a few times, but I've also seen so many people say that she doesn't really have a place in that, or that when people compare her to Whitney or Mary J. Blige or whoever, and I'm not very deep into the whole verses thing, but when many people talk about it, they deny Mariah and they say she's more pop. She's not true R&B. And the only difference between Mariah and some of these other artists is the color of her skin. And because of the color of her skin, there are certain expectations that are put on her. And those expectations are rooted in the conversation of race and the dynamic of racism and power that exists within the American conversation of pop culture and society. And by saying that this biracial woman does not have the right to cross over, this biracial woman does not have the right to explore the different avenues and different corners of her existence. She does not have the right to explore hip-hop and R&B and gospel and soul and jazz, just like any other black person. By saying that she does not have the right to do so, and by labeling those things as detours, as in saying that who she really is and where she really stands is rooted in whiteness or in closeness to whiteness, and her proximity to whiteness is the validity of her as an artist. What you are doing is denying her that right to be herself. And in that act, it is an act of racism. That's how I view this. I don't know if it was his intention, but that's how I view it. Mariah very, very much exists within the gray area with her music. Her music is a reflection of who she is because she pours all of herself into her songs and all of herself into her music. But what happened when a reviewer like Stephen Erlewine did what he did, and so many other people do, when they reject her and they say she can't do this and what she's doing is somehow fraudulent or it's not genuine and it's not organic, what you're doing is rejecting her because her music is a reflection of her. And that caused the shift that happened in the Emancipation era to come. In the Emancipation era, Mariah threw her hands up and said, I surrender. I'm no longer trying to prove myself. I'm no longer trying to please anybody. I am going to make the music that feels right for me. And I am going to finally have fun as myself. In many ways, that era was a declaration. The Emancipation of Mimi was a declaration of Mariah Carey. Emancipation, Declaration, Proclamation. History students will understand where I'm going with all them Asians. It was very much a declaration, not just in the songs, but in the words. Every time Mariah spoke about that album, there was a glint in her eye. And you could tell that this was somebody who was getting more centered within herself without chasing that approval, without chasing that check from her fans or check from the critics. This was somebody who was really coming into her own and discovering what it meant to be an artist on her own terms. It was her definition of self that I found was so powerful. And she actually said something to MTV in 2004 about the making of this album and how it was really her claiming her freedom. She says, for the first time in my life, I feel free and unashamed to be who I really am. I am celebrating that I've grown into a person, an artist who no longer feels imprisoned by my insecurities. I can now honestly say, this is me, the real me. Take it or leave it. Mariah was done trying to live up to anybody's expectation, yours or mine, and she was allowing herself to be. Now with the Emancipation of Mimi, and which continued to onto the E MC Squared album in 2008, Mariah was really achieving the freedom that she had been working for close to a decade. She was finally able to just let herself be on a record without feeling that pressure. But everything wasn't perfect, and a lot of the issues that she started to face, a lot of the pressure that she faced around emancipation, actually started with Charmbracelet, and it actually went all the way through to E MC Squared, were relating to her voice. Mariah had some very rocky moments vocally, and she actually was very misunderstood, and in some cases held to a very high benchmark because of her vocal performances. For instance, on Charmbracelet, when she recorded that album, she did a lot of airy singing. And it's because, we spoke about this before. She transitioned from music box into daydream into butterfly. Mariah started to really experiment with this style of singing that was based on all of this air, heavily influenced by Cindy Mizell, as she pointed out in the interview with Craig Seymour in 1999 for the Washington Post. And, she really brought that to the forefront on Charmbracelet. It actually took over the whole album. And many critics didn't appreciate that. As a matter of fact, we boy Stephen from All Music, he said that her voice was a sad and ugly thing. Her voice was raggedy. And there were many people who just didn't understand that approach to singing. Because these aren't people who understand, the backgrounds of a Luther Vandross and a lot of that 80s style of music where air was actually a very popular thing. People didn't get it, and they really gave her a hard time. And then when we got to the Emancipation of Mimi, she stripped away a lot of that airy singing and she went to the opposite direction where she was singing full voice. But the thing about it is she was singing full voice with a live band. It wasn't overproduced. It wasn't glossy and perfect in a Barbra Streisand, young Whitney, young Celine, young Mariah type of way. She was singing very raw, very Patti LaBelle, very Stevie Wonder. I always hear that parallel when I listen to this album. And she was bringing that out into her singing. But in that moment, you could hear her voice crack and tremble and waver sometimes. You could hear her voice not be as steady as people expected it to be. And I thought that made the music even more enjoyable. She was singing 1970s R&B and soul, modern hip hop. She was bringing all of these elements together in such a raw way. But not everybody appreciated that. And it got really intense with her live performances. Because as Mariah was performing live, we started to hear her falter. She was relying a lot more on backing tracks. And when she would sing fully live, not every performance was clean. Not every performance was perfect as she was known for. For instance, the 2005 BET Awards, I remembered my peers in high school, some of my classmates who knew I was Mr. Mariah. They came to me and they were saying, what happened to your girl last night? She sung bad after they watched the performance. And then, of course, came 2008 where she performed on Good Morning America and her backtrack came on too early. And, stop singing my part now, baby. My voice kind of rough. My soprano friend did not come out today. Don't judge my vocal. But yeah, she was giving you all that moment where it was clear. Wait, now Mariah using our backtrack. The secret wasn't so hidden anymore. And as 2008 wore on and Mariah had more and more shaky performances, the public indignation and the concern about her talent grew. And many people started to line up to take shots at her. And then, of course, came her personal issues. She had a miscarriage late in 2008. And then she got married at the same time. Actually, she got married before the miscarriage. She got married to Nick Cannon. And her focus shifted away from her career. So instead of working as she would have done earlier on to prove herself and prove her critics wrong and prove that she still had it, Mariah was now focusing on her love life. And instead of seeking their approval, she was finding it within herself and within her marriage. So as a result, she dealt with a lot of criticism that she was leaving unchecked. And as a result of that, her career began to have another downturn, at least commercially. But we'll get into that in the next video as we talk about memoirs and beyond. So now let's talk about awesome songs, some of my favorite records from Mariah's career in this 2002-2008 bubble. I want to start off with Clown. Clown is such a brilliantly written song. I always say when you want to hear Mariah, the songwriter, there are certain songs I always pinpoint, like Everything Fades Away from the Music Box era. I always pinpoint Underneath the Stars. I pinpoint songs from Emancipation and Mimi. But when you really want to hear Mariah be Mariah, people talk about the shadiness or they talk about all those things. When you want to hear Mariah, go for the jugular, listen to Clown. The lyrics are biting. They're almost cascading. It's so tightly written. And she sings it in this staccato style. And it's so brilliantly done. And I love that song. Another awesome song is Fly Like a Bird. Now, these songs are not in order, but if I had to pick my favorite, it would be this. Fly Like a Bird is this powerful closing number from the Emancipation of Mimi. Where Clown is from Charmbracelet, this is from Mimi. This song really encapsulates everything I love about Mariah Carey. Mariah it's a testament to her power as a person and as a writer and as a vocalist. She's taking you on this road, this journey where it's almost like a prayer. And as the song climbs, she climbs. The vocal performance matches the music. And that is something that Mariah does so brilliantly as a writer and as a composer. She wrote all of the lyrics to this song. She worked with Big Jim Wright, who co-produced the song and helped co-write. He helped to put together the chords. But she wrote this song, and she was very much at the helm of what it sounded like. And she spoke about singing this song at dawn, at sunrise, and seeing the sun come up as she climbed to that climax. And you hear it in the music. To me, this is a moment where, this is one of my top 10 favorite Mariahs. When you hear this song, all you can do is say, wow. Because she simply takes your breath away. When you hear this song, you know you are listening to somebody who is larger than life. And the final awesome song is actually one you all may not expect, but it's I Know What You Want with Busta Rhymes and the Flip Mode Squad. To me, this song captures so much of what I love about early 2000s hip-hop and R&B. It's like a cross between Quiet Storm and hip-hop. Mariah really gave us a glimpse of where she was going to go with the Emancipation of Mimi into her blackness. And I felt that this record, it was Mariah just relaxing and having fun. She didn't write the record, but you hear her singing on the record with such ease. And there was a groove to the song and I loved it. It was like Sade meets Busta Rhymes. It was something so different, so beautiful that I really love this song. And I love the storytelling that each of the different artists do on the record. It's one of my favorites. I am exhausted. My throat is raw. I'm hungry. I want to go and sit down and relax myself. I need to get some honey in my throat. How to protect my soprano. I really enjoyed putting together this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to share it. That's what I want you all to do with this one. Share this video with your friends. Or the lambs, share it with the lambs. Put it on Facebook. Put it in the groups. Put it on Twitter. I'm not that active right now on social media. I taking care of my mental health. I'm not getting out there in the mix of COVID and all the negativity in the world. I'm taking things one step at a time. So you my social media team. Share this with your friends, get the word out, stick it in your man face, slide it under your girlfriend door, let her watch it. And I will be very grateful. Here now, the camera cut off. It fed up and me talking. That's my cue to go. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Trini Trent TV. I'll catch you all next time before my camera catch fire. Later.